Hey everyone, Chris here. Today I want to make a video that dives into the Angel of Darkness. I recently completed the talk through Tomb Raider 6 video that I have been meaning to do for the last 7 years and only just got around to doing it. So while I'm still in that AOD mindset, I really wanted to take a closer look at the game and a closer look at a lot of the little graphic details. Everything that sort of brings the game to life in a way that the series hadn't been able to up until that point. For this video I'm going to be making use of the AOD SCU that allows you to sort of debug the game, and I think that's the one that lets you fly around. The other thing is going to be Nakamichi's patch. I apologise if I've mispronounced that, but this one is the key to this video. I will put the links to both of these things down underneath the video. If you want to experiment yourself, go ahead. So let's dive in. I apologise in advance, this is just going to be a lot of me just fawning over the wildlife and all of the funny little details that are ultimately nothing more than smoke, but I think it's pretty. So we're going to start on Parisian Backstreets. Like right from the off, you can see just this courtyard, the lighting in this courtyard, the atmosphere is nailed from the very first moment of gameplay. It's gloomy, it's dark, it's wet. The sirens in the background. Just that pitter-patter of rain. I absolutely love rain as it is in general. When it's a lovely day outside, it's great. When it's raining, I wake up feeling really happy, and I think it's just that the noise, the relaxing effect the noise of rain has on me is unparalleled, and I love it. And the Parisian levels have it by the bucket load. I mean, just look at the little impacts from the rain, the splutters, the splatters. Just moving the camera from side to side here, you can see like some of the windows, the doors are just reflected on that ground level, and the detail is just wonderful. The water pouring out of this drain pipe and just down into the drain. They didn't have to do that, but it's raining, so... And there's the little dog, I keep forgetting about the little dog, who looks distressed, to say the least. Now then, this area here, I don't know what it is quite about this area that I really love so much. Again, I think it's the atmosphere and the lighting and the rain. But notice something as well. The rain is sheltered from this area by the rooftop. The rain isn't impacting here. Yeah, we go anywhere else in this environment, and again you have the splatters of the rain hitting the ground, and yet that bit up there is covered and you don't get any. I think that was really, really cool. It's a nice little detail. Another thing I love about this area, this little crow. I don't even know what that key does. I mean, it's obviously not vital to the rest of the game, but this little crow is guarding it, doing a little tippy tappy dance. He's really cool. He's cute. There's something quite spooky about this area. Don't know if it's because it feels so quiet and uneasy, but just the lights. Again, the lighting in this game is so good. So the reflections, they're not just random things. Sometimes even today you'll get reflections in games and they are generic. I think Spider-Man PS4, sometimes you'd go up and there'd be the huge buildings with the big windows on them. They'd be reflecting like another skyscraper with just windows all the way up it, and you think, oh, that's cool because you're going to be zipping past it. But if you look at it and you turn around, there may not even have been a building there. So they've input a completely different reflection to what's there. Yeah, back in 2003, why not 2002, while this was still in development, they made the conscious decision to have the real reflections. And I just think that's really cool. Something else I find quite funny about the crows, their animations are in sync, so no matter where they are, and I would be willing to bet that the other crow down on the other roof is doing exactly the same moves at exactly the same time as these crows. Like pecking, shuffling, all in the same sync. Just the feeling of this, I could just sit here and just stare at it. It's just... It's so immersive. I love it. Going back to the rain again. Sorry. Not sorry. Look how much the rain hits the ground here in the courtyard compared to underneath this tree. It's barely hitting the ground compared to over here. Because it's sheltered by the branches. It's such a nice little detail. There's also something I really enjoy about this. It's the first time you play it, you have no idea where this area is going to lead to. But you can see the next few levels sort of laid out around it, and you have no idea at the time, but they're already there. Like, even if they're just the shells of the areas, it's all laid out right from the start. Again, let's have another little look at these reflections. Yeah. You get the walled, castled area from over there, you get the courtyard beneath. It's all real reflections. Okay, so right from the start of this derelict apartment level, you have the police trying to burst their way through the doors. But there's no one outside. It's a creepy ghost door. Never supposed to see that, but I like it. But look at the detail just on the wiring and the sort of the cage is outstanding, and it's some sort of Art Nouveau style. It's just the work that went into making that, into designing it, is just wonderful. Now then there's this painting here, which after a little search online I found out that it's called San Giacomo di Rialto, San Giacomo in Rialto. With it being Rialto, I figured, okay, so that's Venice, another throwback to another Tomb Raider-y time. Anyway, I looked up this painting online, it's a real painting, and I figured, I was like, okay, I've been to Venice a couple of times, I wonder if I've ever been there. And I looked on the map and I see where it is, and I have been there a couple of times, but I've never seen that church. And I think the reason is because usually that area is full of little markets, and they're not the sort of like canvassy type markets, but the sort where they've got like the sort of outdoor mini rooftops covering all of the stands. So if you walk in there, you can't really see above you because you've got these fake roofs. So it's strange to think that I've actually been there, but I didn't know. The floorboards are broken open. There's a leaking pipe, and there's lights. So this may be an abandoned derelict apartment block, but there is still heating and power, which is quite cool. Nice as well that this light is casting a shadow of the grate that covers it all the way around the room. That's really nice. There's a really cool thing as well, this mechanism that operates the lift. If Lara gets in here and you look up, all you see is this part of the machinery. But it's a completely functioning, working piece of machinery, and you can follow all of it right down to the machine itself. So they could quite easily have just put like a little wire that goes through the wall and it sort of lets them just do whatever they want with it, but they built the machine itself. You'll never see that unless you look up. In fact, I think there's some areas in the game where you can't actually look, or you can't make Lara look. So it's really cool that they went out their way to do that. I think there's a sort of running theme in the development of this game is it's there, but you can't see it. But it's there if you look for it. She has this lovely little fish tank that the devs built things for. Like, these, you can't find these anywhere else in the game. But they built these little fish tank decorations, little walls. Obviously the fish, obviously. A dripping tap. Tiny little things that they didn't need to do. She could have had just a perfectly functioning tap, but it makes it feel real and lived in. There's more of that rain outside. Sorry. Now these are real photographs, and I had a look online and I couldn't find anywhere that confirms who these people are. and it wouldn't surprise me if they were like relatives of the developers or friends. But there is one, to me, that kind of bears a resemblance to Jonelle Elliott, which is nice. The window that Lara escapes through, you see her jump out the window and run off. There's even details here that they didn't need to include, but they put in there, and it makes it that tiny extra bit real. Pieces of trash on the floor, scrunched up newspapers, cans, a bag that's burst open, and all the garbage has gone everywhere. I don't think you can even see that from the window. Again, the rain, the ambience. It's so well done. And again, the very awesome fact that you can actually see the previous few levels. Still in a fair bit of detail, to be honest. This warehouse here. And I find it interesting because this has a real resemblance to the warehouse from that very, very, very first teaser for what was then Tomb Raider Next Generation. Very similarly lit, grimy, dirty, rusty, cold looking place. The helicopter itself, you can't get anywhere near the helicopter, but look inside. You can actually see they built some of the inside. There's lights on the display, there's a sort of figure outline of a person sitting there. Now then, towards the end of the level, Lara jumps over and she tries to grab this pipe. She falls into a trash skip thing. You don't really see anything else around here, but they built boxes. They littered the street with things like these burning cans. The ghetto area is fantastically built. There are so many little details here that I could spend about 5 feature-length videos explaining, because there's so many things that you can't really access, but they built anyway. There's a pretty gruesome little detail in the ghetto. Why is it empty is because of the monstrum killings. Everyone is afraid. There's a lot of blood. There were a lot of attacks here. It's not surprising that this place is empty. But it doesn't feel empty and it doesn't feel unused. It's been lived in. There's trash, there's leaves, there's waste. There's things that you wouldn't see unless you specifically looked, but they've been built. Like these shutters on the windows. The decoration that goes around the shutters. So one of my favourite things actually about this area is these people down here. This guy cooking a steak on a stick. This dog is super excited. Look how cute. Look how cute his little face is. Okay, that's haunting. That's not cute. So the game doesn't register the movement of the camera as a physical presence. But if you go over there with Lara, he suddenly gets very agitated and he tries to use his steak on a stick like a weapon. Again, all of these paintings on the wall, they have that really cool reflection effect on them. Obviously we've got Kurtis in the corner. I don't think I noticed him the first time I ever played it, but I don't think you're supposed to at that point. You're not supposed to have any idea who he is. As pretty as the lighting is, and the lighting is always pretty in this game, his cafe is a mess. Full ashtrays, plates of food uneaten, napkins just left around. They built little areas into here that you may never see, but they're there. This little back door is a little storeroom. We have spare things in boxes. There's also music coming from somewhere that I've never noticed before. I can't see any speakers or anything, it might just be a sort of ambient thing. But it sets the scene, and it sounds good. Again, with the flickering lights, it's that sort of industrial workspacey thing that you can't stare at it for long, it gives you a headache, but it's fitting for the kind of work space. The floor is littered with pieces of paper and rubbish that could easily have fallen down through the hole or through the next area and just been left there. There's pieces of the wall showing through. It's not just flat untextured places here. It's stuff that makes it look real and old. The design choice was fantastic. This room, while it could just seem like, yep, that's fine, and you've got the nightclub above, there's a little bit more to it, and I quite like these kegs and the beer kegs. And they're linked up, and they go through to behind the bar, to exactly where the taps are. Again, like in the room with the elevator, they could just have left it and had just like a wire going up into the ceiling and that's it. But they chose to make the wires come to specifically where the taps are, and it's such a nice little effect. Again, it's something that you don't know is there until you look for it. Again, just look at the lighting. Oh, it's so nice. It's just calm and smooth and just so atmospheric. Again, you have this sort of grate that covers the light, and when you look around you see the pattern from that grate all around the room. Really nice attention to detail. If you come up all the way to the top, look at how this level is put together. You have these multi-leveled platforms that come all the way around the side of the room. And I think a lot of people dismiss this game because of how industrial and how un-Tomb Raider-y it was, which is just BS anyway, because everyone who's played the game knows that there is an abundance of old, awesome locations in this game. But imagine if this room in particular was kitted out with hieroglyphs on the walls, stone walls with carvings, you have your slopes, you have your ladders, there's stuff to push around on the floor, I believe. You have switch-operated things. This is such a classic Tomb Raider environment. And it's so nicely made. Look at the grime on top of this water. I think the way they've done it as well is they've got a texture just under the surface, and then it's reflected upside down on the top of the water. This guy is so messed up. He is covered in tiny little holes, and you have all of this sort of gruesome metal. Chrome stuff coming out of him. I did wonder as well where his forearm has gone. It's sort of fused back to the biggest wound on his abdomen. People wondering why is it all metallic? One of the things that Eckhardt does is he uses his magic alchemical glove to sort of harvest these metallic elements from inside the human body. Get yourself a copy of the Dark Angel Symphony Kurtis journal written by Murty Schofield. Inside he does actually give some more little hints as to these metals. I will admit, straight up, drains, not my thing. Sewers, can't stand them in games. I really don't think they're brilliant environments. But this one is very nicely designed. Look at the little rat. I just think that's so cool. With the drain pipes leaking and oozing stuff. It's grim. There's burst pipes, there's gases coming from places. Everything really sort of contributes to that horrible, yucky, nasty environment. This is very cool as well, how every individual piece of trash has its own ripple. I might be biased, I used to have a pet rat when I was a kid. I think they're cute. I love as well how this just has this sort of grime and slime, where it's just sort of been here uncleaned for so long. Very nice, realistic little touch. So a lot of things in the Louvre galleries, they're either real or they're based on real things. You have things that I believe are Akkadian, but the Babylonian culture and mythos is tied a fair bit to the myth of the Nephilim, which... Oh. So outside in this courtyard, again, there's little details that you wouldn't ever necessarily see, like scattered bits of rubbish on the floor. It's even out of sight of the window where you'd look through it. You can't see it, but it's there. The structural design inside this building is phenomenal. Like, they They crafted the details, the floral details on the tops of these columns. You know, they wouldn't even have had to do that because, again, the player is never going to get up there. Lara is never going to be up close to these things. They could easily have just made little shapes like this and textured them, but they carved them out. They went to such detail. Like even in the decoration of the archways. It's magnificent. You know, I never noticed how the ambient track to this level is very similar to the oil rig in Tomb Raider 2. All that sort of metallic clanging. Now I like this cabinet. This cabinet has a lot of Egyptian papyruses, one of which is the Book of the Dead. The bottom left one is the Book of the Dead, or an excerpt from it. You can see Anubis, you can see the sort of trials of the underworld. Now obviously there's going to be stuff like that in the actual Louvre, but I think in this instance, I think it's a nice little throwback to the Last Revelation. The reflections on the tiled floor here are so nice. It's such a shiny, shiny place. Everything is so polished and clean and neat and tidy. The tag of the security guard lists June 1999, which I suppose could be around the time when The Angel of Darkness went into production. Now then, there is a lot of Da Vinci in this version of the Louvre, which is something my husband finds quite funny.
Wrong, wrong, wrong. You have stuff that is not there, and they're not paintings. Frescoes like the Last Supper over there, or the School of Athens, that are, first of all, huge. Second of all, not in the Louvre. Some sort of Renaissance package, not like...
Very nicely lit area. Jesus. When we get to Carvier's office, it's full of plot-rich details, like this portrait right on her mantelpiece, which is of Eckhardt. It's one of my favourite pieces of artwork to do with the game as well, because it's sort of rich in that there's the backstory of Eckhardt and him being imprisoned underneath Castle Kriegler, which you can see in the background up there. On her computer you have a flash forwards to something that we don't know about yet, and that is Vasiley, who we find out more about in Prague. And if you look very carefully at his insignia, a lot of foreshadowing, it's really cool. And then you have things like Anatolia, Cappadocia, artwork of the actual Nephilim. The dig site has some really cool stuff in these little tents off to the side. You have all of these computer with like dig equipment, surveillance, seismographs. So the sort of things that they would basically scan the ground and sort of see what's there. I love how they've had all of this equipment out here and they're investigating the symbols on that big doorway down below, and it's like whoever was involved in this, Lara comes along and just shows them up just like that. And then you got this. Oh, I love this thing so much. When they made Angel of Darkness, they really sort of went about it that Lara's in an unfamiliar urban setting and they wanted to bring you back. They wanted you to go on that journey and help Lara get back to her roots. And with so, you going back to your roots in terms of tomb raiding. And this mechanism, this doorway, is basically the gateway back into Lara's old life, and I absolutely love it because it's such a cool looking thing. I think a few of the symbols are alchemical, to do with planets. I think there's one that's Mercury, Saturn. So it's sort of, it does link into Eckhardt and the bigger story anyway. It's not just random symbols. Like, where to even begin? These gargoyles, they're very, very cool. I think they're very similar to the sort that are on Notre Dame. And then you have these things underneath, which is like, God knows, some sort of demon holding flamingos? Crocodiles. No, they have wings. I don't know what they are. They look cool anyway. This broken bridge, the way it's sort of fractured in the middle. It's like I feel there's so much story behind that. What happened? I also love how the earth from above has sort of fallen through here. Oh, maybe that's what happened to the bridge. Maybe the ceiling collapsed. Some big rocks smashed through here. Really is. It's just bam. Brings Lara right back to her roots. And this is just the start. And I can't not mention the bats. Look at the bats. Fluttering around. Again, another little touch of realism. Ish. Remember what I was saying before about how the lighting in this game is spot on? Look at it, it's beautiful. See, I think this is another one of those bits from earlier in development where they had, I think there was a big statue and Lara sort of swung over a flagpole and kicked and jumped off backwards. I really wish that was still in it. I wish they'd got to realise that vision. The light beams, the reflections, oh my god, the reflections. Just down to the little swirly little grate. The finer points and the details, i.e. this room is probably one of my favourite rooms in Tomb Raider, full stop. This room takes my breath away every single time. This is one of the pinnacles of Tomb Raider in its entirety. It is an absolute masterpiece. The detail that went into all of these different paintings, and they're all available online. You can like really look at what each full painting looked like. Oof, I love how its lips have sort of sealed together with like sinew and oh, it's so gruesome. Notice as well how his kind of shorts with a high waist belt and the clips really mirror Lara's. That can't have been accidental. The designs all the way around. Bits like this, they could just have been left as flat, plain stone textures. This little snake contraption that sort of lights the flames in the room is really cool. And I think there's a lot of alchemical symbolism with that. With the twisted snake symbol, I think is, oddly enough though, I think it's to do with Asclepios, the healer. Interesting as well, the symbol above the door is a Celtic green man symbol, which doesn't really bear any link to a fiery environment. But just look at it, look at the lava textures. And that sort of wavy, the heat blur coming off everything, it just gives it that little extra touch of realism. It's fantastic, this is such a cool room. I love his animations. See, now this guy has the insignia of the Lux Veritatis on his shield. I don't think any of the others do. Look at the fish! Somehow there are trout living here. I can't think there's much for them to eat. See, I think this whole room as well, it really reminds me of the... Is it Hall of Neptune from Anniversary? Not that I think they played this game, unfortunately. Bears quite a bit of resemblance, but I think that's due to the fact that Core probably based this area on their sort of puzzle rooms from Tomb Raider 1 in St. Francis Folly. I really love this floor gate as well. It's just really nicely done. Maybe I'm easily pleased, I don't care. Now this room was my favourite of all of the traps rooms. I think because it was just so chaotic and collapsy and really Tomb Raider-y. But this huge angelic Nephilim-esque statue at the other side is just so cool. I never realised it had horns. So this statue collapses almost immediately and you don't really see the details of it. And I didn't know it had horns. So it has hooves and it has horns. So we're kind of looking here at a more demonic version. It's quite similar to sort of Baphomet imagery, with the hooves and the horns and the wings. Now I know a lot of people hate this room. I really quite like it. Number one, the lighting is just beautiful, again, like so many other places in this game. But look at these cool heads on the walls. Cool Tomb Raider-y concept. What's inside his mouth? Nothing. The walls are not just flat, they're all angled and wonky. They really give the impression of an old and broken place. Yeah, with somehow torches that are still lit. Look how intricate it is. All of the different cogs turning all of the different ways that power it by the different gas pipes. It's just another layer to the entire concept of the puzzle of the Hall of Seasons. And the developers could quite easily have been like, yeah, Lara, press some switches and up these things come, and she can then climb up. But by doing this and making this thing, it shows how everything it's grounded in its own reality. It has an actual machine and a mechanism that Lara has to make work to push these things up. It's not just something that happens off screen. Something I never realised about this room, because I was always in such a panic, I didn't actually realise that every single statue is holding a copy of one of the Obscura paintings. I thought literally only the glowing statue had the portrait, and I thought that when it stopped glowing, the painting switched places. I think the entire thing is sort of supposed to be reminiscent of the catacombs underneath Paris, with the skulls everywhere and the bones everywhere. It's just outstanding. I love what they've done with this room. Okay, fun fact of the day. This scene where we first see Kurtis, he comes from behind Lara, but he didn't know he had this magic power. He just morphed through a wall. I really like Von Croy's apartment. Like, just as a studio apartment, I think it's so nice. Obviously without the blood and mess everywhere. What's new in archaeology? Inca studies. Quite nice, we never saw him go to South America. That could have been quite cool. So he has many copies of The Island of Dr. Moreau, and if you haven't read The Island of Dr. Moreau, the basic idea is of a higher species interfering in the evolution of a lesser species, including lots of experimentation and the creation of hybrids. And I don't think I really need to explain the connection to the Angel of Darkness. It's such a cool touch. Really nice little detail. Also, I don't know how many days it's been since the police closed this area off, but they left a fish on the counter. This place must be stinking, and not just because of the human remains scattered all over the walls. I just love the exposed brick, the wood panels. Cats, he had cats. As well, the little mosaic details inside his bathroom. Really nice. Also, look how nice that door handle is. Like, the little block with the lock on it. Could have just been a shiny sheet of golden metal. Nope, it's ornate. I'm pretty sure that's a portrait of Edgar Allan Poe on his wall. If anyone can read that, be my guest. I can make out picture. That's about all. We have an apartment that is being maybe renovated, painted. Lots of nice sort of newspapers scattered across the floor to catch the paint. On the wall, you have what I think is a Gustave Doré engraving, which shows basically angels flying through this heavenly portal. I guess it's kind of related to the Angel of Darkness in that the Nephilim were created by the angels who came from heaven to earth. This is such a nice building. It's like in complete contrast to that derelict apartment block. such a nice ambient atmosphere. So of course he has his dossiers on all of the major players, including Carell, which is how we assume Lara knows who he is at the end. But he's there. Just have to look for him. What are you doing? The fountain water feature in the middle, Lara can't really get very close to it, but if we zoom in, it's really nicely designed. It's just a lot of little detail adds to the realism. They're Strahov guards. I always used to think they were just police, but they have the symbol of the it's Eckhardt's symbol. Is it the golden lion? It's all to do with the prophecy. Nice and tidy. I love the ragdoll in this game so much. There's a lot of blood on the floor, newspaper clippings, basically a whole mess in here. But also the alchemical symbols from the glove and the blood splatter on the wall, so we know exactly who's to blame. This is a very cool room with a bit of a throwback to the Hall of Seasons. So some of the same paintings are used on the floor here. Some might think, oh, they're just reusing textures, but it's very fitting because the Hall of Seasons was a Lux Veritatis stronghold, at least a tomb, for their leader, one of their leaders. Vasiley has links to the Lux Veritatis. He is one of the old families. I don't remember anything about this painting. Potentially Lux Veritatis people guarding Eckhardt? Maybe? I love big libraries. The balconies are really ornate as well. Very nicely designed. The ornate picture frames. The ornate designs. The really small ones. All this little fine detail. Now then, interesting stuff. So we have obviously part of the notebook from von Croy, which is probably where he got this. Well, Vasiley is probably where he got this from. And it shows, I think this one is about the Golden Lion prophecy that Eckhardt takes to mean him. If he thinks he's the Golden Lion, then he was imprisoned using the 3 periapt shards. This is talking about the periapt shards, and it's a sword. It's a really flipping cool Nephilim sword, which I believe is probably influenced by one of the pieces of concept art for the game. It's so cool, I love it. Oh, God, imagine if Lara got to use that. This is a sculpture of a Nephilim. Again, another piece of concept art for this. Very shiny, I never realised how shiny it was. Love it. If anyone is good with 3D modelling, please make me one. I'll pay you an exposure. This empty one, this last one is a bit of a mystery. So we can assume that that's supposed to be like a head of a mannequin that would maybe have had like a hat or a helmet. But what if that is the helmet? And the only one I can think of it being is the one that Eckhardt was sealed inside underneath Castle Kriegler when he was detained, shall we say. I think there's a piece of concept art that looks vaguely similar to that in that it's like a full head with like notches on top. Someone in a red gown. Slightly reminds me again of another piece of concept art that was done for Angel of Darkness that shows off a potential Nephilim. Another engraving, which is backwards. I just realised it's backwards. Look, the name's at the bottom. Limu, Vasiley. But it's flipped, it should be the other way around. Welcome to the Strahov. The first thing we see is this giant symbol, this lion imagery that Eckhardt keeps using to describe himself, based on his old, I think it was probably a Lux Veritatis prophecy. Those entwined double snake symbols again. It's something that Eckhardt has taken to represent himself. And if it's snakes, then you have all of that obvious Old Testament imagery of evil. But something entwined is most likely to do with fate. So he sees himself as this fated lion. This logo is on everything. He's really gone for it with his branding. I've got to give him that. So these trucks are likely the trucks that brought the sarcophagus from Turkey with the Nephilim inside, the sleeper. Jenny Millwood actually wrote a fantastic short story based on the drivers, which I actually started to base one of my university final projects on. But yeah, if you haven't read Jenny's short story, I'll try and post a link down below if it's still online. Really nice though. I mean, look up, you're never gonna get to go up there, but you have all of these different platforms and pipes leading everywhere throughout the building, buzzing, the electric lights. The flickering lights is just another little detail that you're not going to notice unless you look up or get up close to. Steam! Look at the steam coming out of the pipe. I know I'm getting excited over steam, but it makes it look real. They put so much work into all of the little details. I remember when I first played it, I thought this was the actual sarcophagus, but it's too thin, it's too skinny. Oh, there's a hole inside it. Nothing inside it. Maybe they were looking for something inside it. Or maybe this was part of the tablet that was on top of the sarcophagus. Yeah, nice shiny reflections. These are some damn polished saws. Really nice fine detail on the barbed wire as well. Ooh, it's all rusty and nasty. The bio research facility, hands down, is one of the prettiest looking areas in the entire game. It's so bright and colourful, and the light beams pouring through, which is interesting considering how snowy it is outside. It's Muller's doing. He's a gardener. He's probably got some lighting system set up to help. I really like this. I'm a sucker for a water feature anyway, but this is so cool. Sort of strange goat demon. All of these giant sort of pitcher plants and the sort of carnivorous plants as well, which are really fitting. He's experimenting with evil sort of demon type DNA on plants, and they're growing all of these nasty spikes. Were the plants teeny tiny, they'd probably be eating flies, but I'm gonna guess they've been feeding things like cows and probably people to these plants. Look at that. All the plants are sort of slightly waving. A real sort of tropical house feel to this place. I love this creature. Sort of very human, plant-based, nasty Nephilim hybrid. If you notice as well, it's got very similar sort of holes to where Bouchard's bodyguard had them. Also a lot sort of on its torso. Maybe that was linked, maybe that's a design choice link to wherever Eckhardt harvested the metals. And maybe some of those subjects were given to Muller to experiment on. That's got to be one of the creepiest creatures in the game. Now this lab equipment, it looks so old. Sort of a whiff of alchemy about these things. Really nicely designed. Also the twisted pipes, that's a cool design choice. They could just easily have been pipes that came down, but they designed them all crooked and just really interesting to look at. Very, very cool room. You know what I'm gonna say? Look at the lighting, it's so pretty. Really soft, the sort of yellows and the blues and purples and the greens. It's so nice for such a small and frankly insignificant room. Look at it. Now how cool is this room? Again, a similar sort of lighting from the other few rooms combined. You've got that sort of the misty, hazy feel about it with the blues and the greens and the purples. We also got the light beams coming in through the top, mixed in with the sort of torch beam from this guard guy. The really ornate balconies, the greenery just growing over everything and pouring down the walls. Just, it looks alive. It looks like a really bizarre hybrid of old and new, of metals and life and biology. And then we have everyone's favourite critter. What was that supposed to be a hybrid of? Crocodile, I guess, from the way it's moving its tail. It's a little bit dinosaur-y, so you've got some sort of reptile in there. The jaws, they're kind of like a beetle, like a rhinoceros beetle. I guess it's just crocodile and Nephilim DNA spliced. Some sort of old greenhouse observatory. Again, it's beautifully designed. Really, really nicely made. The time that must have gone into just building just that, in terms of textures and crafting it all. Also the floor. Well, the main attention is obviously this giant hybrid plant root system tree. Look at the floor. You have all of this sort of grass, but it's not what was originally there, because you've got this old looking stone paved floor that's broken apart from years of use. Now all of this greenery has started to crop over the top of it. I always forget how big this room is. There's so much going on in it. It's such a weird juxtaposition, isn't it? Really pretty, beautiful butterflies and plants next to this hideous, spiky, nasty things. Although I suppose the title Angel of Darkness is kind of juxtaposition in itself, with the sort of imagery of both sides of angels and darkness. So many different textures. All of the windows, the walls, the pipes, the trees, the plants, the metal, the structures all around it. It's a really cool room. God, it must have taken a long time to get this room done. One of the Strahov guards who's probably touched one of the plants, it's probably eaten him. Check out his card. Oh, it says quite clearly next to it, Mark E. Zimmerman. Just, why is Carell there? He's supposed to be, what, Eckhardt's banker, his lawyer? I suppose if his lawyer's there, then he can help with legal details such as killing employees. You might be quite interested to know that she falls out of its back. Sleepy Boaz. So right from the off, the Sanitarium delivers something that's a really cool hybrid of the old and the new. The architecture of this building, sort of towering old column style mixed with this nasty metallic cage, but really nice lighting. You know what I never noticed before is how much this is kind of like a modern take on St. Francis Folly. The circular platforms especially is quite reminiscent of Core's unreleased anniversary edition St. Francis Folly, which all of the central platforms were disc-shaped. Interesting that Kurtis has a swimming animation as well, but I can't think we got any swimming parts with him. Oh, the inmates are creepy as hell. They went to town designing these things. Look at like the scars all over its face and the things sticking into its head. The general run-down appearance of this place is so perfect. It just looks like it's never been washed. It's the most unhygienic, yucky, vile looking, creepy place. Broken walls, broken floors, water damage everywhere, mold. Ugh. This room is so One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. I don't think that's blood. All of that's coming out of the pipes, and I just can't shake the feeling that it's sewage. Again, you know what's wild is that the way this is all laid out just gives the feeling that at one point it was up and running and operational with very ill people at one point a long time ago, but everything has just gone to ruin. That at some point people were sat at these tables. It's talking about it as though it's real. It's giving me the same feeling as seeing old photos of places like this, where you just get that bizarre sense of emptiness from it, a sort of sadness for the way things have gone to ruin and the things that happened there. Maybe it's just me. They're either stained or there's supposed to be like food still in these containers. That's really grim. I bet that stinks as well. Ugh. Ooh, now this is cool. I completely forgot about this. Not only is it still dripping, so it's quite recent, and I'm imagining that the successful proto came along and got rid of this guy. He looks like a well-fed Von Croy. And to be fair, he kind of looks like his model. Oh, little cracks in the paintwork. So there doesn't seem to be any way of getting into this room, at least I can't make Kurtis operate the door. But they have built an entire room in here as well, which is just full of cages, where I can assume they would have kept their test subjects. And it's like they're not the simplest of objects to have built and not used, so I guess that's real attention for detail for something that can only really be viewed through this glass door. Ooh, okay, creepy hospital vibes. And that's before we've even seen this guy. Yikes. Where to even begin? I don't even know what they were attempting to do with this guy in particular. Ooh, the Silent Hill vibes of this area. Oh, the mechanism on this fan is... it's not a small amount of detail they've gone into. Oh. You have that sort of one-way mirror thing. You have the files of no doubt the person who's dead in there. You have two chairs and a chocolate bar. So you can just imagine like Boaz and one of her other employees probably just sat there munching on some chocolate and slowly watching him perish. That's really, really grotesque. And the proto itself, it doesn't seem that much different from that thing that was hanging up in the other room. I think it's got some of its skin like pulled back and stitched back, or it's wearing some sort of harness. This room though, real Final Fantasy VII Maker Reactor style room, yeah, nicely laid out. I mean, they don't, like, even when it's a room like this, it's sort of a boss arena, so you're always going to be focused on trying to kill this creature. You're never really going to explore or look around. Yeah, they've still gone into all this detail of like the proper sort of iron girders and the pipes and the lighting and how the lighting falls on all of the surfaces. So they didn't skimp on the detail even in places like this where you're not necessarily going to see it. I mean, look at this as well, underneath the floor, all of these different pipes and the textures and how it looks. So much detail. This makes me happy. I don't even know what to say. It's just, look at it. Look how intricate all of it is. The piping, the lighting, the textures, the way everything is laid out, the things that Lara can interact with. It makes me really happy, but it also makes me really sad. For obvious reasons. It's also really nicely detailed as well, just in a sort of small scale way, like the grates on the floor. I like as well how the water level changes. It's not just sort of set to one thing, it's a level, and some of the environment sometimes goes under it. It's a really cool way of doing water. I remember the first time I saw this and Lara got her swimsuit And it just had so many sort of old school Tomb Raider vibes, the traps underwater, the current that just moves Lara around, and how all the bits in the water sort of float the same way as well. Probably Lux Veritatis built tunnels, and yet we've gone further down, even deeper, to these old caves below that. So again, like in the Hall of Seasons, like in the Louvre, you had the slow descent from the modern, like the Aquatic Research Centre, down through these old tunnels until you get to what used to be there. And it's just that theme that always ran through Tomb Raider right from the start, right from the caves down through the old Lost City into the Lost Valley and into the temple and the tomb, from the higher up coming to the lower down. I think that's one of the reasons why I really enjoy Shadow, is because it nailed that as well. You have that sort of big outside environment, sometimes the sort of modern day places, and then you dig down and you get further down, you go into these caves, and then it's just Lara getting lower and lower and further into the past. It's really cool. I love that animation so much. Now this environment is so rich in plot and mythology detail. Big plaque over here with the LV, which is basically Lux Veritatis, but it's also two surnames, and it echoes the engraving we saw earlier on. We have Vasiley, the ancestor of the art dealer. We have Eckhardt, the place in the Parisian Backstreets, and we have Limo, which was the other name written on the engraving. And I'm not that well versed in Lux Veritatis lore, but with the prominence of L and V, the letters and those two names, it wouldn't surprise me if they were the two founding members of the Lux Veritatis, perhaps. You can see as well these soldiers are kitted out in pretty much the same way, or they have some similarity at least to the undead skeletal warriors in the Hall of Seasons and the ones in the next area here. Reminds me very much of this sort of rocky, sandy area that we may well have seen in the Cappadocia levels, had there been a sequel. But there's so much talk of what was going to be in which game. It does make me wonder if this area was originally built to be Cappadocia. Either way, it's so nicely done. Look at this haze down here with the heat blur coming off it. Real impression that you're really low down, close to magma or something. And here we are, within the Vault of Trophies, the secret Lux Veritatis vault. And it's just wonderfully made. Again, this is the painting that we first saw in Margot Carvier's office in the Louvre. Symbolic, of course, of Eckhardt being imprisoned underneath Castle Kriegler. Again, look at that helmet and think back to the helmet within Vasiley's collection. Same one? Quite possibly. And you can see as well the 3 points where Eckhardt has been, well, he's been stabbed with the periap shards, and they're keeping him imprisoned. I like their shields. It's kind of like twin dragons. I wonder if that's any significance. Probably of... I always wanted to explore this room more, and it always annoyed me that those two guards are unkillable because it barely gives you a chance to properly check the area out. It's interesting, the design is very much a mishmash of a lot of the other creatures that we've already seen. So initially it looks like one of those sort of cockroachy things that you see in the bioresearch area. But then you have obviously the spikes, which are indicative of the Nephilim DNA. But then you have these, like, the front claws with that mouth in the middle is very much like that water beastie. Obviously you have Boaz herself. I do wonder if she retained any sort of control over this creature after it did this, after it sort of took her inside it. Ooh, all those sort of eggs, those are the things you burst, aren't they? Yikes. And I do wonder what this room is supposed to be intended for, because you have that platform that raises up. Like, the edges are definitely reminiscent of a gladiatorial arena with the spikes to keep people from escaping and climbing out. You have all of these archways, possibly for the function of having viewers. You have obviously the big door that Lara goes through at the end. Tis a place of sadness. There's also really nice designs around the edge of this room as well. Interesting, the imagery here is very similar. It's two kind of dragons, which is the symbol on that Lux Veritatis shield. So perhaps as well, this was part of an old Lux Veritatis stronghold. But what would they have used this for? Ah, look how awesome this is. So you have, obviously, from the off, you have this broken bridge, which is really reminiscent of Tomb Raider 1 in the Lost Valley. It's a nice little throwback there. You have all of the lava that's pouring out, and it's even, they've built little troughs to guide the lava, which is a really cool little detail, which I assume is some leftover of Eckhardt, maybe one of Eckhardt's devices in helping with his alchemy and stuff like that. Everything as well is really jagged. Like, if you think back to the previous Tomb Raider games before this, everything was squares or triangles, and this is really sort of pushing it to the, look, we can do sort of round, bizarre looking little platforms. We're not limited anymore. It looks great, with the heat blur and the light pouring through as well. And then you have these lamps. I love these Eckhardt lamps. Pretty sure they were based off this really cool piece of concept art. And of course, again, we have this imagery, this lion imagery that Eckhardt is continuously, obsessively using to brand himself with. And he also had someone, maybe even him, God knows he had enough time throughout his centuries of existence to create this bust of himself sticking out of the wall. Little bit of a narcissist. Who am I kidding? I'd love a doorway like that. It would be so cool. Now, Eckhardt's lab is very cool. It's potentially his original laboratory before he got all high-tech and built the Strahov with all of its new tech and new kit. So we have very old, medieval-looking torture devices. You have this thing connected to bars with the gold around it is quite reminiscent of a sort of Philosopher's Stone style kit, perhaps. And this device is really cool. I honestly have no idea what it was supposed to do, but look at it. Really, really cool. Eerie, greeny yellow, sickly glow. Something isn't right. I really like this effect on the water as well. It's steaming, it's bubbling, it's all of this acidic, horrible, yikes stuff. Which is great as well, considering this is where he hid one of the periapt shards that kept him imprisoned, so that no one else could do it again. Enter Lara. This final area, look at it. It's such a bizarre machine. So this is the machine that Eckhardt built to keep the sleeper receiving all of its metallic fluids and stuff to keep it alive. All of the stuff that Eckhardt harnessed, I believe that's what he was doing with it, was feeding this thing. This incredible looking entity. Now you can see things like its claws, these spikes on its back, which I suppose could be some sort of offshoot wing stumps. Like, there is no way this thing is not an extraterrestrial. No way. I mean, you can look at all of the iconography and the the stories and the myths about them, and you can take them at face value, or you can go the way that I have many a time and just thought, well, there are these higher race of beings that have come from the heavens, and is it a fallen angel human hybrid? Is it an alien human hybrid? Unfortunately, that story was not continued, but I love to speculate because it's just so cool and it's just one hell of an awesome concept. I like how he put a biohazard sign on it just in case any of his workers died, like he gives a damn. Eckhardt's device here is super interesting because it's the first time you see the different pieces of the Sanglyph which were hidden inside the Obscura paintings. But all of the symbolism here as well, you have just different pieces of different religions. You have, it's the Hindu, Taoist, Islam, Christian, Sikh. I think there's a scarab at the bottom. There's a pentacle on the left hand side. You have a inverted pentagram in the middle, which is obviously this sort of dark magic idea, and it sort of encapsulates him and his alchemy very well. And something I never noticed before because I was so intent on avoiding is laser blasts. Another power that Eckhardt has is teleportation, because after every few moves he leaps up into the air and vanishes, and that's not something I'd ever really noticed before. Pop. And here he is. He's creating something from nothing, and it's this idea of alchemy, and it really ties into all of his powers. It's a very cool thing. I really like him as the last boss. I think it's very cool. What's also very cool imagery as well, again, is that sort of juxtaposition of this is something very old in a very, very new place. It's something old that's being given new life. And it just seems to be, at least to me anyway, layer upon layer of symbolism and representation of this game in itself, because it was a new start for Lara, or it was intended as a new start, a new beginning, a new chapter for Lara and for Tomb Raider. It was this thing that had been around for a while already. It was about to be given fresh life and a new start. So that's pretty much it. We've come to the end. And I think I only have a couple of takeaways from this, is I've had such an absolute blast looking so deeply at all of the little details of this game. I think it's actually fair to say that, you know how ever since it was released, it's not given enough credit? It's still not being given enough credit. I think even the people who are giving it credit are not giving it enough credit. The details in this game, the little graphical things, they tie in so well with a game that is so rich in mythology and the history of its own story. There is just so much to visually appreciate about this game, and that's before even talking about the music, the actual storyline, the characterization of everyone. Because just to look at this game, the one that came out in 2003, as a step up from the game before it, wow. It's like they may have not been a giant team, they may have been quite a small team, relatively, especially compared to games and development companies today. And whatever happened behind the scenes, my god, if they were allowed to fully realise their vision for this game, it makes me sad, it makes me upset that it didn't completely come to life. The effort that they put into all of those little things, outstanding.